Okay. All right. Mary, I'm an addict and an alcoholic. And this is my story. Um, let's see. It began about I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I remember getting my first sips of wine through my father. Used to be a lot of partying and stuff. When my mother used to go out to bingo and stuff with her father on the weekends, and my father would have people over the house, and actually pretty young people over the house, and they get together, they party, smoke weed, and drink wine, and I'd get the luxury of taking sips off the wine bottle um, during that. And I had like a pretty kind of like a weird story. Like it's hard to really figure out where I want to start with it, but what he used to do is he would be out in the living room, and they'd be partying and drinking a lot all night, and we'd actually be locked in the rooms that have the doorknobs tied and stuff like that, and we couldn't get out of the rooms while they were all partying. And at the end of the night, when everybody left, then he'd let us out, and I'd be able to have some, wine or whatever. And then things got more graphic with that. There was a lot of sexual abuse and stuff in my past. So, but anyways, when I first got into really drinking was when I was 11 years old. I had my first joint, and my father had parties still continuing in the house with teenagers, and they had a beer around and stuff. And my father asked me if I wanted to have a beer. He said, "Go ahead, it's fine, it's okay." So I tried it, and my first sip with the beer was I didn't like it. I threw it down. I was like, "I don't want this." And then I said, and he's like, "Well, go ahead, try some more, try some more." I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So I tried it, I drank down the whole glass, and then I liked the way it felt. And ever since then, I just, it just seems like I never stopped loving it. I just loved it more every time. And just the high feel. And I felt like it was somewhere where I was comfortable, and, so I continued drinking, throughout my, teenage years from 12. And I, started using cocaine at 15 years old. The first time I used, cocaine, I found it in my mother's pocketbook. I asked her, I said, what is this in your pocketbook? And she's like, it's something that Uncle Joe gave me or whatever. And I was like, well, so can I try it? And she's like, oh, I don't know. We went on discussion. So eventually she let me try it. And of course, I loved that. So now we're 15, smoking weed, drinking booze, doing coke. And then from there, I started spending a lot of weekends with my uncle up his house, and he was a drug dealer, and we had access to everything we wanted basically. So I ended up getting into Valiums at his house, and I ended up picking up a Valium addiction. Me and one of the other kids in the neighborhood, and the way we used to end up getting our Valiums after uncle's supply ran out is we would go to the old people's homes and to the houses in the neighborhoods and go in their cabinets and steal the Valiums and get them that way. We ended up having quite a few parties like that with the Valiums, and of course always the coke and the booze was always there as in the weed. Just keep adding more crap onto it, and that went on for many many years. I ended up deciding around 17 years old that I wanted to try to get sober on my own. And I ended up trying to get away from, at the time I was living with my uncle. I tried to get out of his house and move back in with my father's, just to stay sober. And he threw a big fit. He started crying, throwing a big tantrum. He doesn't want to do this. He can't handle this, blah, 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 as he's half wasted. So, so I ended up going to another uncle's house. And when I lived with that uncle, I met a kid who was like 16 himself. And I ended up hanging at his house a lot. And that actually ended up being like my home. And they begged me to try to straighten my life out completely, because I did end up, I'm sorry, I skipped that part. I ended up relapsing for about a year when I was with this kid after I moved into his house. And then they begged me to go into rehab to turn myself into a facility. So I ended up doing that, turned myself into a facility at 18 years old. Ended up in there for about 2 weeks. And the meantime, while I was in that place, I met somebody in there and we were exchanging drugs. We were pretending we were swallowing the pills that they were giving us, the Librium and the Ativan and stuff. And we were actually like giving each other a hug and exchanging his pills for my pills through like our mouth and stuff like that. It's weird, you know. I just a thing that I learned when I was younger. That's how people do it. So I said, okay, I'll try it, you know. And but that went for 2 weeks anyways. I ended up staying there. And then I tried to end up, I got out. I told them, well, I tried to get out. I said I was getting better and all this stuff. And I want to go home. And they wouldn't let me go home because I had signed a paper saying that I would stay in there and it was a locked facility. So I couldn't get out. And I threw a fit. I ended up tearing the place up. I ripped up the mattresses, throwing things across the floors. They sent the psychiatrist in to talk to me. He talked to me, and his solution was Xanax. So he gave me some Xanax. So I said, oh, this is a nice little game that I can be playing, because I kind of figured, you know, I've seen other people doing it. I can just throw another fit and get more. So what did I do? Threw another fit, stir up the place again. And this time they ended up strapping me down to the bed. I was flipped out. They ended up giving me, I thought that stuff is the needles that they give you to calm you down. And I don't know what they call that, but they gave me that, and it calmed me down and stuff like that. And so I said, okay, I you know, whatever. I promised I wasn't going to do this again and stuff. And he ended up, when I came off, he gave me a higher dosage of Xanax. So, so I was all wasted out in detox. And finally, they decided, after I threw multiple fits and I had severe panic attacks, and those were the first panic attacks I actually experienced was in detox. And they finally decided they would let me get out. If with my mother signed permission, they would let me go under the agreement that I was banned for life from the detox center. I could never go back to that one again. So that happened with that when I was 18. So I ended up getting out. Big story, just moving back and forth to many, many different homes, through many different relatives and friends. I could say I've probably lived about 6 different places in this city. There's so much that I really can't just wrap it all up into one story. That's why I get so like, oh, let's see what happened here, what happened there, because there's so much. But I ended up where I could say at 20 years old, I had like about 2 years recovery. I ended up getting straight when I was 18. Again, I put myself in with a counselor, and then I ended up 2 years straight. And then at 20 years old, I ended up relapsing again. And the way I ended up relapsing was my brother came in with a few bottles of hard stuff. And he said, well, you've been sober 2 years. You're not an alcoholic. And, you know, let's just try. We'll do one shot together. And I said, you know, I was like, all right, I did it. And guess what? All it took was that one shot, and I was back at it again, like crazy. I mean, I couldn't stop. And I'm the type of person to where I'm a binge drinker. I don't drink just to drink. I drink to get so obliviated to where, I mean, like I can't even like move. I pass out. I drink till I pass out. That's the type of alcoholic I am. And through drinking that way, I've almost died a couple times, which I'll talk about soon. But so I ended up, I relapsed for a couple more years. And I did end up getting back into a different detox. I stayed just in the detox for a couple of days, got out, called again, went back in for a couple of days, got out. So we figured now I was 21 then. And of course, I ended up getting all drunk again for many more years. And by the time I hit 26, I had such a heavy cocaine habit that I wasn't really getting, like, I just feel like I couldn't get enough. And I met a guy who actually, through a party, he's like, well, have you ever tried smoking it? I was like, no, I never tried that and stuff. So that's where I got introduced to crack cocaine. I was about 26 years old. And at the time, which I missed a lot of what happened, but I've had my first son at the time, and when I started smoking crack cocaine, and I had a nice place to stay and all that stuff. And within a matter of a year, I ended up losing that apartment because we couldn't pay the bills and nothing. Everything was being sold. Um, so my mother helped me get into another apartment. I moved into another apartment and things only went more downhill from there. He moved in one of his friends who was another crack addict. He made more friendships with more dealers and stuff. And it became like a crack house. Our house was so bad, like it got infested with rats and everything because it's just we had what we used for a toilet was a hole in the floor. We didn't even have a toilet anymore. It was like the kids broke the toilet and the landlord wouldn't fix it. We wouldn't pay rent. We just refused to pay rent. We had a rat in our wall. Um, it's all kinds of crazy stuff. All for crack cocaine, just to get high. And it's like PTSD when I think about it. I get shaky and stuff because I can't believe how I could ever do the things I did or feel the way I did. I mean, I came to a point and I really shouldn't even say it, but I came to a point that like everything has a value. I could sell this, that, anything. I don't need this. I don't need a TV. I don't need gas. I don't need phones. I don't need lights. I just, I can get, this is crack. This can wait. My lights, phone, gas, all that can wait. And so I ended up losing that apartment. I got taken to court, lost that apartment. The boyfriend that I had at the time ended up moving in with my sister. And I went and I moved back with I moved with my mother temporarily at that point. And her husband and her both were bad alcoholics. And I took my son with me there. And I think I had two kids at that point. Actually, I had both of my sons. My other son was a real little baby then. So yeah. So we took them to my mother's house. I ended up drinking and partying, doing what I wanted at my mother's house. As long anything I could do anything as long as it wasn't crack there, so it didn't matter. Um, in the meantime, when I was living with my mother, I got a phone call from my ex-boyfriend, and this is before he moved in with my sister. I'm sorry. This is he called and he found an apartment for us. And he found an apartment in Southbridge. He swore up and down he was clean and he wasn't going to do anything, and so I'm like, okay, all right, we'll do it. We'll go there. We'll try it out. Get to the place. About 2 weeks later, he has already. He said, I christened the place." He starts laughing and he comes out with a crack pipe. So here we go again. So now I'm in a neighborhood, and I find out as I'm living in the neighborhood, more people come out of the woodwork. We have crack dealers, heroin dealers, the whole 9 yards. Things got even worse than they were at the other apartment. I had people coming in and out, dealing drugs, doing drugs, just kids running all over. My kids running all over the town, doing what they want. My ex-boyfriend actually taught my kids how to make those homemade Drano bombs. And one day we were over at the neighbor's house, and one of my kids threw a Drano bomb in the driveway, and boom, and what was that? That was my kid, I mean, and this is how much we were paying attention back then. And I noticed throughout that time, I noticed there was a car that kept hanging around a lot, and I'm like, I think we're gonna get raided. And everybody's like, no, you're insane, you're paranoid. And at this point in my life, like I was so bad on crack, I was hiding in bathtubs and stuff, smoking, like, with the curtains drawn and stuff like that, and crawling underneath the air conditioners and peeking my head out, hoping the cops don't see me, And and I said, no, those cars been hanging around an awful lot. I'm telling you, I've been seeing the same car here, quite a while. So, a few months go on and I still see the same car. And I'm like, I called my mother, and out of desperation, I'm like, I'm going to end up losing my kids. I just told her, I said, listen, I'm going to lose my kids. I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose my life. I got to get the fuck out of here now. So she took me back there to her house, and we left most of my stuff there. I got the kids. got out, and within a matter of less than 3 weeks, that both places got raided. The apartment building next door to me and my apartment got raided. They raided the whole place, took it down, and took the people down, and then my ex-boyfriend still decided he'd stay around, and now he'd move in with my sister. And I was with my mother. He lived with my sister, and it didn't stop there. Once again, all the drug dealers came, all the crack came. Now my sister got hooked on crack. And I found out that him and my sister were having an affair together. And it was a big, really nutty shit show, man. And so somewhere in between there, I decided I was going to try to get off of crack. So I went to NA, took myself to NA, asked them to go. They played the game maybe one time. I knew they weren't serious. I'm like, fuck this. I don't need them to go with me. I went myself, went to NA for a little while. Cleaned up my act for, let's see, I was about 30 years old by that time. I cleaned up my act for probably about 3 years. I'm looking at notes here. So if you see me looking down, that's why, because I have to write notes, really. So when I was 34 years old, I ended up staying clean for about 2 or 3 years. When I was 34 years old, I ended up relapsing again on alcohol, not crack this time, just bad on alcohol. Spending nights out till 5 o'clock in the morning. I was living with my mother, jumping in cars with strangers. I got roofied one night. Lucky I knew something was wrong. I left the bar. I had somebody take me halfway to my house, and I said, okay, I'll make a phone call from here, just leave. And I made a phone call at the gas station. I could barely press the numbers on the phone. I couldn't to call my mother's house with who I lived with, and I knew the number by heart, but I was so drugged out that I was like trying to press the numbers, and I was like passing out. And next thing you know, I woke up and I was in the middle of the gas station parking lot driveway. I was like, how did I get here? And I mean, my mother had just pulled up. She's like, what's going on? What's going on? And I'm like, just take me home. Just take me home. And for like 3 days, I like couldn't move off her couch. I was roofied, and thank God it just ended like that. And let's see, from there, shit, was a shit show for quite a while. I met a guy through work, and he was in a halfway house in that period of time. And he said to me, I don't drink and stuff like that. So, and I haven't drank for 2 years. So I was like, okay, let's do this then. He's like, well, go to AA, and if you want to be with me, we'll go to AA meetings and stuff like that. So we ended up doing that. And we ended up doing AA and NA actually for quite a few years after that, about 4 years. Then we ended up moving together with the kids. We got a place out in another town here, and things seemed to be going perfectly great. I was dead sober. I worked in the preschool with children and stuff like that. I had my middle son he was quite a handful. So, but besides that, everything else was, under control. We were pretty happy. And one day we went out camping. And at this point, I was about 7 years sober. And we went camping, and we had the kids with us. And he says, what do you think if we have a couple of drinks? The kids aren't here. Do you think we could have a couple of drinks? Of course, my first response was, no way, no. And I said, okay, let's try it. Fuck it. I said, we'll stop. We'll have a few. We'll stop. It ended up to be a case of beer later for me. And I was working on a pint of hard alcohol. And he was on his second pint of hard alcohol. We got in the car and decided we'd take a ride. And we were on a highway. And on our way back, we ended up in a head-on collision with a town selectman and his daughter in the car. Lucky nobody got killed. I can remember that. I'll tell you, I can remember that car accident. Like it seemed to go so slow. It was like everything was in slow motion. I remember the car turning. It was just like frames. It was, things like in picture frames. It was like so slow. It was crazy. And I remember the crash, all that. And I remember looking at my boyfriend, and his head was on the steering wheel, and it was just it's real graphic stuff. And it was just, I thought he was dead. I the funniest thing is that during this crash, this is kind of it's not funny, but it kind of is. I had the bottle in my hand still, and the top of the bottle was cut off, and I still had the bottle, the booze bottle, in my hand with the bottle cut off. Okay, and but we found out later that what happened was the man who we hit got a broken pelvis, and thank God nothing happened to the kid. So you figured that would straighten me out. No, that didn't straighten me out. He ended up going to jail for 18 months because he's already had, previous problems. And plus, he hit somebody and almost killed him. So he got in there, and I straightened out for a few months, and then I went back on my little benders and stuff. And I ended up, when he came home, we ended up splitting up. And that set me on a real badass rampage of total drinking for a few more years, drinking, partying, cocaine, going to the bars down the road from my house. And I ended up getting in a real bad situation one time where I came home from the bar, and my son, who was a really bad drug addict, was at my house with his girlfriend. And they knew I was shit-faced. I had a computer. They had no money. They drugged me. I almost ended up dying. Well, the doctor told me a few years later. He said, "Do you remember when you died and they brought you back?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yes." He said, "You actually they just brought you, like you were gone for a second and they brought you back." I said, "I never realized that happened," and that's exactly what happened. Was I almost died that day. I found out later, but yeah, and yeah, so my computer got ripped off. My son and his girlfriend put, like I said, they drugged me, ripped me off, took all the phones out of the house so nobody could call anybody. I don't know what happened. Somehow somebody got a hold of my mother, and they called the ambulance and got me in time. Somebody did somehow. Maybe they called the ambulance and took the phones, but there was no phone. All the phones ripped out of the walls when my mother got there. So, and but that didn't stop me. I'm never going to drink again. I almost died. I'm never going to drink again. Blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks later, I'm back at it again. Jesus, that spiel went on for a few years as well, after. Ended up doing that for a while. And then I met another guy that I work with, and we ended up staying together. Well, I knew him for about 10 years. We ended up living together for about 4 years, and I ended up staying clean for another 4 years at that point. I ended up getting sober when he moved in with me for 4 years. And then, boy, it's a shit show. Let's see. Him and I ended up splitting up. He was a lot younger than me. He didn't want to be with an older woman anymore, so he found somebody else at work. And that sent me back on another relapse for another few more years. I ended up doing that, and I met my boyfriend Don on the internet. Yeah, he was a drug addict, and he's trying to straighten his life out. So it sounds like a good idea to move him in with me. I've only known him on the internet for 6 months. So I move him in with me. He finds out I had quite a bit of money at that time. Stupid ass me on the computer, gloating about all these Guns N' Roses tickets I have and stuff like that. And so perfect way to get scammed, which I wasn't thinking that, So he moves in with me. First thing he wants is A, B, C, D, and this, and the guy has 18-inch arms, and there's no telling him no. So he wants all the money for all the Suboxone he wants and whatever, and ended up to be actually what happened was he was selling the Suboxone, getting fentanyl, just lying to me, saying it was Suboxone and stuff, and I ended up, like I said, I was so I drank it heavily again at that period of time, and we got into a really big brawl one night, and he went completely psycho on me. He flipped over all the tables, and he slammed a wine glass on the table. And he there was a cut off stem of the wine glass, and he actually put it up to my throat and told me he was going to kill me and stuff, and then get upstairs and all that shit. And I was never been so scared in my whole life as that day. That was like, out of all the things that have ever happened to me, that I know what it's like to be on the other side of that horror movie, to be that person that's being going to be killed. And ever since that day, like I hear loud noises and stuff, and I'll jump because I got PTSD from that. And I ended up losing everything again with him, and we ended up moving out to here, and he was still on heroin. I'm moving out to where I am today. He was still on heroin and being destructive and aggressive, and I put up with it for many years. I finally got him to the point to where he decided that he would stay on the Suboxone program, and he would get clean. And if I stood by him for a few days while he was detoxing, and I did that, I watched him detox. I helped him through it. I got myself clean as well. I stayed sober and stayed off the drugs and everything, and that worked out great for a couple of years, for 2 years. And then one day he came out really aggressive for no reason, and he just started smashing shit up. And I was like, forget it. I snuck out the door. I moved into my mother's house just for 2 weeks, just until I got rid of him. We got him out. I came back home, and within a matter of a month, I ended up relapsing again. And this was my final relapse, and it lasted for about 2 years. And I just started going back down that pattern again, calling out of work every day, every other day type of thing. It was becoming every other day after a while. It was just like I couldn't work anymore. My anxiety, my nerves were so bad. I was in a total brain fog. I couldn't think. It's like trying to get words out was like, it still is hard for me today. It's just weird. So I said I had enough of this shit. I said, how am I going to stop? And what I ended up doing was I said, well, what if I call my doctor and see if he can help me out? And, and maybe it wouldn't be so bad to maybe just try to join one of these online community things I've been looking at. So I called my doctor, and he said, oh, absolutely, there's something we can do to help you. And he put me on naltrexone, because the thought of alcohol wouldn't leave my mind. I had to be on something. So he put me on naltrexone, and I said, okay, I'm going to work this. I'm going to join community. I'm going to be a part of sobriety. I'm going to do things differently from what I ever did in my life. I'm going to go to school. I want to start learning. I want to make something of myself. Now at 56 years old, I finally decide I want to do this now. And, but this is what I want to do more than anything in my life. And, ever since I made that phone call to that doctor, I joined community. It's been over a year, and I've stayed sober, and I am actually sober. I am not just like straight. Before, when I was trying to become sober, I was just dry. I was totally dry. I had I wasn't happy. I was raw, some rotten attitude, miserable, life sucked type of thing, because I didn't have connections with people. I didn't feel like I had any self-worth. I was stuck with the people that were bringing me down. I never had any boundaries, never set any boundaries for myself or anything like that. And now that I have, my life's 100% better. I can't ask for much more than what I already got. Money couldn't buy how happy I feel right now. And that's where I am today anyways. I know it's probably a big scatterbrained story, but it's really hard for me to say my story though. So, but that's what it was. And that's it.
All right, Mary. Thank you. Before I stop the recording though, can I ask you a few questions?
Absolutely.
So here, let's rip through a few of them. And if there's any you can't answer, don't worry about it. Just don't answer it. Just pass the next one. So what would you say has been the most challenging part of your journey so far in recovery this time?
Honestly, the most challenging part for me, it's going through a bad relationship. When I went through a bad relationship and stuff like that, trying to remain sober this time around, because that's how I relapsed the last time. Is I had a bad relationship, and a lot of my relapses have been around, feeling rejection and not knowing, and just trying to numb myself out. Yep.
Cool. Gotcha. What would you say has been the most rewarding, part of your journey so far being sober?
The most rewarding part actually is like meeting people, the community, knowing that I can help other people, and knowing that there are people that really do care out there, and I can think more clearly now. I feel like I have much like self-worth now. I never felt like I had any kind of type of a self-worth, and just the people I surround myself with, the happy, I got a lot of happiness. So that's, yeah, that's the most rewarding. Absolutely.
Awesome. Is there any like specific like milestones, moments, like achievements that you've had like throughout this journey that, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, I definitely would consider milestones is for me is like I don't know, like I've been hosting like a lot of meetings and stuff like that. I do stuff like that. I do a lot of volunteer. I have been creating a program with one of the directors for the Phoenix, and I actually got a really big compliment from her today. You said you're doing amazing, Mary. I love your work. I love what you gave to me for an advertisement that I made for her. So for me, those are milestones. I go by like, small accomplishments are milestones for me. Everything I can take, is a milestone for me at this point. You look at me at this time last year, and it was like, I didn't go to school or nothing. I knew nothing. Not that dumb, but you know what I mean? I didn't know. I was so very uneducated, and I'm learning a lot more now. So,
Hey, we're still learning every day.
yeah.
I'll ask you three other quick ones. In what ways, like today, do you kind of prioritize more and practice more like your self-care and like well-being?
I try to actually practice a lot more mindfulness now. And I've been trying to take more time for myself to do the things that I like now. At first, in recovery for a while there, I was like really slamming myself, trying to do everything at once. And you can't take, 56 years of life and try to, do that all in one day. It's not going to happen. It took us this long to get where we are, and it's gonna take years to, it's just gonna take the rest of my life to keep moving forward, honestly. Just move forward forever. I don't really, like what I do is I enjoy what, the stuff that I do. And try to look at it as a hobby. And if something comes of what I do, then that's great. If not, then I still help somebody. That's it.
Two others. What would you tell somebody who is struggling to get sober or, seeking sobriety?
Well, one thing I'd tell them is I go by the saying it's never quit quitting, because no matter how many times you fall, you still can get up, still try again. It's doable. And there's many people out there who've had way worse than any of us have, and they've still made it.
Nice. And I know you put on the post, never quit quitting, but just to make, wait, did Mike leave? Does Mike, no, Mike's there. So
No, Mike's there.
oh, sorry. I couldn't see it on the screen. Um, what is your all-time favorite cliche?
That's it.
Is it never quit quitting? All
Never
right.
quit quitting. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Mary.
Hmm.